Unions and a major contractor have condemned the last-minute decision by the government not to sign a contract to start work on Britain's first new nuclear power plant in 20 years. The deal for an £18 billion plant at Hinkley in Somerset was supposed to be signed today, with a French energy company EDF and a Chinese company which is a key investor. The government says it will now make a final decision in the autumn. Our business editor Simon Jack reports.
Just when you think you've got there, you hit another bump in the road. After EDF's board voted to give this project the green light, today was meant to be a celebration. This tent should have been thronging, with officials celebrating the start of construction in earnest, with the on-site workforce growing from hundreds to thousands. But the government said, not so fast.
Deeply disappointed, and I've spoken to many people who are really angry. People who spent years working to get us to the position that we've got to. There was real celebrations yesterday when the EDF's board made the final investment decision, and this has very much felt like a slap in the face from the UK government.
So what happens now? Basically there are three options. Option 1, pause. Think, read the small print and sign the original deal. Option 2, renegotiate. Try and save money by offering EDF a lower price for the energy from Hinkley. But this might further delay or risk the project collapsing, as EDF only just agreed to this one. Option 3, cancel. Walk away, save £18 billion, saying after a decade of efforts from two previous governments, this isn't the deal for us. But then where would the electricity everyone agrees we need then come from? The government says it wants to take its time to review its options. After all, this is a 50-year commitment we're talking about. It'll lock us into a contract that could cost consumers £30 billion over the lifetime of the contract. That all seems fair enough, but they didn't tell the very people building it until the last moment. And that seems a strange way to treat important trading partners like China, like France, at the very time you're trying to tell the world you're open for business. Remember, EDF is 85% owned by the French state. You upset EDF, you upset France.
If one of the governments, one of the sides cancels the deal, it's going to be very bitter on the other side, and it could contribute to a souring of the relationships between the two countries, especially in the context of the Brexit.
China agreed to put in a third of the money, a result in part of a George Osborne charm offensive. But changing partners or price will be very difficult.
I think effectively what it means is that the deal in its current form is dead in the water. I think the only reason for a review can be one of two factors. First, that the government don't like the price that is being asked. Second, that they don't like the involvement of the Chinese in the way that's suggested. I think it's going to be very difficult to renegotiate either of those.
Once again, the decision on this mammoth project has been parked while we wait, this time for the government to decide the way forward. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Well, the Hinkley Point nuclear plant was due to start generating power in 2025. So with the project on pause for now, what are the government's other options for making sure the lights stay on in the future? Our science editor David Shipman is here. And David, it's a pretty complicated picture, isn't it?
You're right, it is very complicated. And the context for this long-running saga is that over the past decade, one government after another has tried to balance three very different aims. Keeping the lights on as older power stations are phased out, keeping energy bills as low as possible for consumers, and cutting our carbon emissions to help tackle climate change. So Hinkley, which would produce 7% of UK needs with carbon-free power, meets two of those objectives, but it is expensive. Even so, supporters say it's essential.
When you look at a nuclear plant, the upfront capital cost to build the power station is very high. But you've got to look at the through-life costs and how long these power stations are generating for. So Hinkley Point will be generating for probably 50 years plus, and for all of that time it's going to be giving secure electricity, reliable electricity and clean electricity continuously.
The two reactors planned for Hinkley were picked because they were the most modern design with the largest power output.
The operating concept is the same as for a pressurized water reactor.
But projects to build these EPR reactors have struggled. I saw one in Finland, which is running 9 years late, and there isn't yet one working anywhere. So what about alternatives? Renewable energy produced 25% of UK power in the first 3 months of this year. It's carbon-free and costs are falling, but wind and solar are intermittent, which really matters in a long cold winter. Gas is another option. It provided 37% of our power earlier this year. It's the cleanest fossil fuel, but either we import it, which creates uncertainty, or get it by fracking. And we've seen the opposition to that. So a serious homegrown supply could be years away. A third option is to be more efficient. Modern appliances use less power than older ones. So demand fell 6% over the past 3 years, nearly as much as Hinkley would generate. So critics say nuclear power is a costly mistake.
If you look at the cost of Hinkley to the consumer, astronomical. I mean, they're now talking about the consumers paying £30 billion above the wholesale price of electricity during its lifetime. Huge sum of money. And then you've got to deal with the nuclear waste. You've got to store this waste for hundreds of thousands of years. It's very radioactive. They don't yet know what they're going to do with that waste.
Ultimately, there are no easy options. No single source of power meets all of those objectives of being reliable, cheap and carbon-free. Big decisions about energy are always hard. This one is